Dragon Quest XI has been a long time coming, with Dragon Quest IX being an original DS game and Dragon Quest X being a Wii-exclusive Japanese MMO. It hasn't been since Dragon Quest VIII in 2005 that we've received a fully 3D entry in this legendary JRPG series. Leading up to its Western release, Dragon Quest XI had a lot of hype surrounding it, and for good reason. Based on the footage available, the game looked incredible, and upon its initial release in Japan, it received rave reviews from fans and critics alike. Now, given Japan's utter obsession with the series, this is hardly surprising. But now that I've had extensive time with the game, let's break down Dragon Quest XI and see how it fares next to its contemporaries, as well as what has come before it. I'm Virgil for JRPG Central, and this is my review for Dragon Quest XI: Echoes of an Elusive Age. If you've never played a Dragon Quest game before, let me ease your worries immediately. Dragon Quest XI is the best game to start with if you are new to the series. It's the prettiest, the most accessible both in terms of gameplay and where you can play it, and luckily for you, the games aren't really connected at all. There are minor callbacks, of course, and some lore stuff that you will love if you are a big Dragon Quest dork like I am, but nothing will leave you in the dark or confused. The story in Dragon Quest XI is somewhat of a standard affair, at least at first glance. You take control of the Luminary, the reincarnation of the legendary warrior Erdwin, who once saved the world from a great evil. Once you come of age, you set off on your journey to fulfill your destiny as Luminary to drive off the darkness that will plague the world once more. While there is nothing original about this setup, the execution of the story is actually quite good. There are plenty of twists and turns that keep the story engaging from beginning to end. And thanks to the fantastic cast of characters, the story never really stops being enjoyable. The cast in Dragon Quest XI is just stellar, arguably the best in the series. Eric's cool yet regular demeanor, Veronica's rash attitude beautifully contrasting with her short stature, and Sylvando's Sylvando-ness, they are all amazing and such a diverse cast of characters that I loved spending time getting to know. As circumstances changed throughout the story, new revelations deepened bonds between existing characters and further fleshed out others. This is certainly a cast of characters I will not soon forget, unlike some other JRPGs that came out this year. Dragon Quest XI's art direction is top-shelf quality. Outside of the odd oversight in texture work here and there, specifically in zoom-ins, the game looks absolutely stunning. Akira Toriyama's distinct style has never been so accurately depicted in 3D before. From the character models down to the locations you visit, it all has Toriyama's authentic stamp of artistry. Characters are incredibly well animated and well voice acted. Everybody sounds about how you'd expect them to. And something that blew me away when I finally noticed it was that the lip syncing is perfectly matched to the English dubbing. It's probably among the best lip syncing I've seen, especially for a JRPG. And it's even more impressive when you realize that the Japanese version had no voice acting at all. So this was something done specifically for the international release. As far as animations go though, the enemies easily steal the show. They animate so fluidly and are just overflowing with charm. Like, check out this death animation from this hooded enemy. Notice how when you kill him, his axe flies up in the air before coming down and bonking him on the head. Almost all of the enemies have cute animations like that that just really bring them to life more than just a standard mob in a standard JRPG. Some of their designs, too, are ripped straight out of the older games, and it's incredible how faithful they are to their retro incarnations. Especially when you consider that these are fully rendered 3D models, yet from the front, they perfectly match their 8-bit and 16-bit counterparts. This world that these characters and enemies inhabit feels so authentic and well realized. It's filled to the brim with different towns full of shops, NPCs, and side quests to take on. I was particularly impressed with the sheer amount of dialogue in the game. Outside of 1 or 2 per town, all NPCs can be talked to and have quite a bit to say. And anytime anything changed in the story or setting, everybody in the town would have all new dialogue to discover. I can't even imagine the amount of work that went into localizing the insane amount of text in this game. It's also worth noting that during this localization, they heavily updated the UI and menus to bring the game more in line with other modern games. See, in Japan, the game had the same basic white text on black backgrounds that the series has had since the NES days. This was clearly intentional, and while they're certainly nostalgic and all, I am glad that they updated the game with proper menus. Square should be praised for their work here, and quite honestly for bringing the game overseas at all. Dragon Quest has never been a hot seller, really anywhere other than its home country. So when I started to see official US Dragon Quest accounts pop up on the likes of Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, I knew that Square was putting their money where their mouth was and really giving Dragon Quest XI a fair shot at success. They pushed this game harder than they have any other Western Dragon Quest release, and I really appreciate the effort here, because the more people who know about Dragon Quest, the better. I will say how much you enjoy Dragon Quest XI's gameplay will depend on how old school you like your JRPGs. If you've played a Dragon Quest game before, then you're good. You know exactly what you're getting. However, if you've never played a Dragon Quest before, you should be aware that the series has pretty much followed the if it ain't broke, don't fix it model since the very first game. Battles are turn-based, there is no ATB, no turn order manipulation, just good old-fashioned turn-based gameplay. If that's not your thing, then you probably won't like Dragon Quest XI's take on it, if you can even call it a take at all. If, however, you are a staunch fan of classic turn-based gameplay and the retro JRPG classics, then Dragon Quest XI will feel right at home. I will say at the very least that the game does abandon random encounters like so many other modern JRPGs have these days. The only thing that the game does to even attempt to mix up the formula is by giving you the ability to change the so-called battle mode. You can change this in the settings and have the option to choose between freeform fighting and classic camera. Classic camera is pretty self-explanatory. The camera remains locked and will give you the usual cinematic angles when attacking, healing, and so on. The freeform fighting option, on the other hand, not only unlocks the camera, giving you full control of it during battles, it also allows you to control and move your character around the battlefield during them. The only caveat is that the core gameplay remains unchanged, so yes, while you can move around, you'll still be taking turns and selecting options from a menu once it is your turn, and you can only move around once your action has been selected. Even then, movement doesn't really add anything to the gameplay. There are no positional advantages here, so attacking an enemy from behind, for example, will do just as much damage as attacking it from the front. I do appreciate the effort of trying to do something to change it up, but it really doesn't do enough, in my opinion, and for the most part, I recommend just sticking to the classic camera mode. Before you do battle, however, you'll need yourself some equipment. You can, of course, buy equipment from the various shops in the game, but that isn't your only option. Using the resources you find throughout your journey, either through exploration or through completing side quests, you can forge all new weapons and armor for use in battle. To do so, you will first need to find crafting recipes. These are obtained by breaking into various strangers' homes and rummaging through their things, as of course a protagonist is one to do. During your B&E adventures, be sure to keep an eye out for red books. These will contain either historical information on the town you're in, or more useful, the aforementioned crafting recipes. Once you've got yourself a recipe, you can set up camp, take a break reading your favorite novel of choice, before rolling up your sleeves and putting hammer to iron to create all new gear. Forging is optional, I suppose, as most of the things you make can be bought later on for a price, so if it's not your thing, you can mostly ignore it. I wouldn't recommend that though, as forging and the accompanying minigame you use to forge are nice mellow breaks from the action of fighting monsters. In general, there's always something to do in Dragon Quest XI. You can forge some dresses made of steel, throw away your hard-earned gold at the casino playing poker, break people's things. It's just one of those days! Attend a cosplay convention, and much, much more. By the time the end credits finally rolled, I had put over 140 hours into the game. Much more than I have any other JRPG's main story in recent memory. I'm sure you could chop off maybe 10 to 20 hours of that to either idle time or just random exploring, but that's still an impressive 120 hours of content. There's the main storyline, which in and of itself is decently long, but the post-game is meaty in its own right, and the way Dragon Quest XI handles it is rather interesting. It's honestly something they could have gotten away with charging money for as a DLC add-on, because it'll take you an additional 20 to 30 hours to see everything the post-game has to offer. The sheer value here for the content you're getting in the game cannot be overstated. I think my only complaint here is that the exploration was surprisingly linear. By the second time I went somewhere the story wasn't directly telling me to go, only to find out I couldn't do anything there until the story directly told me to go there, I kind of stopped exploring off the beaten path altogether. Dragon Quest hasn't ever been known for its extensive non-linearity or anything like that, but given how large some of the environments are, this continued to disappoint and discourage me every time it happened. Moving on to the biggest disappointment, and let's be real, you all knew this was coming. I can't review Dragon Quest XI without addressing the massive toy trumpet playing elephant in the room, which is the game's music. The one thing that Dragon Quest XI is missing, the one place where it fails almost completely, is with its music. At its best, it's passable generic RPG music. At its worst, however, it's, well, the worst. By now you've likely heard the many complaints online about the music in the game, but if you haven't played the game yet, you might not know that there are actually two massive problems with Dragon Quest XI's score. Let's start off with the most obvious offender, which is the quality of the actual recordings. Dragon Quest XI uses MIDI samples for its entire soundtrack, outside of, ironically enough, the opening video, which is the very first piece of music you hear in the game, which by the way does a great job of showing you what you're missing. Now, here's the thing. MIDI itself isn't inherently bad. There are plenty of good to even great sounding electronically sampled soundtracks out there. But when used lazily or cheaply, you get an end product that sounds like this. Now, if that sounds good to you, then we will have to agree to disagree on this one, because this was easily the worst piece of music I heard in the game. I actually sat down my controller to take it in when the battle started. The footage that you just saw, I didn't go back and record that. That was the actual first time I did that battle and the actual first time I heard that song. I literally stopped. I could hardly believe what was coming out of my TV. It's not just that the game uses MIDI samples, which already isn't ideal. It's that it uses samples that are below average at best. I refuse to believe that in 2018, or 2017 if you want to go off of the Japanese release date, that these are the best MIDI samples the team could have come up with. There are far better sounding samples in much older games, and there's really simply no excuse for the product we received. On top of this, however, I find the actual compositions here to be lacking as well. Many of the songs are pre-existing tunes, which I don't necessarily have a problem with, but the new compositions aren't impressive in the slightest. Take the casino theme, for example. Both the MIDI and the orchestral versions of this song are terrible, because a bad song is a bad song, regardless of the instruments used. When you compare this to other high-profile JRPGs, it's just flat-out embarrassing. Not only does Dragon Quest XI's score not compare to games like Persona 5, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, or even Octopath Traveler, which ironically was trying to be retro, it doesn't even compare to what's come before it. Like it or not, Square Enix set a precedent with Dragon Quest VIII and its accompanying score when it was released back in 2005 in the US and 2006 in PAL territories. This was the first 3D entry in the series, having skipped 3D completely for the PS1. For many people, 3D free roam Dragon Quest is synonymous with a symphonic score. It's a part of what made 3D Dragon Quest 3D Dragon Quest. In the case of Dragon Quest VIII, it lended the game a whimsical, almost magical atmosphere that honestly few other games I have ever played have been able to replicate. And in the same way that the move to 3D was, in a way, the full realization of the worlds Yuji Horii had created, the orchestrated soundtrack was equally the full realization of all of Koichi Sugiyama's previous work. There were orchestrated albums of his work on the older games, which were sold in Japan back in the day, but this was the first time you could actually hear Sugiyama's true vision for his compositions while playing the very games he composed them for. And it was a powerful thing. The man is a classically trained composer, for God's sakes. Even his NES compositions, as limited by technology as they were at the time, were composed in the style of classical music. This is the very reason they translate so well to the orchestra hall to begin with. This is all without mentioning the fact that Sugiyama is famously overprotective of his work. An orchestrated version of the soundtrack does exist, but only as a product that Sugiyama wants to sell you. This is the only reason the game doesn't have a quality soundtrack, so that Sugiyama can sell these albums separately. This entire situation really rubs me the wrong way. No doubt the man is a legend, but his bullheadedness continues to affect the quality of the product. Luckily, if you have a decent enough gaming PC, there is a mod that swaps out the original MIDI files with the appropriate symphonic versions of the tracks. They're even looped correctly and everything, and let me tell you, it is a night and day difference. It changes the entire tone of the game, and as a PS4 player, it honestly breaks my heart that I can't experience this. The day I come back to this game, it will most definitely be a PC playthrough with this mod installed. I think the reason this bothers me so much is the missed opportunity of it all. Dragon Quest XI had the potential to be better than every other Dragon Quest game ever made in literally every single way, but the music keeps it from achieving that feat, and this, along with these stupid reasons behind it, make it an incredibly tough pill to swallow. With that said, Dragon Quest XI is still an incredible JRPG. For the most part, it delivers on the vision Dragon Quest VIII set out to achieve back on the PlayStation 2. It's got a vaster, more detailed world, and thanks to Unreal Engine 4, Akira Toriyama's art and characters are able to come to life like never before. The classic Dragon Quest gameplay remains largely unchanged, but that's because it's tried and true. And the game's only major misstep can be easily remedied with a mod, that is, if you are playing on PC, which is most definitely the way I recommend playing the game. Whether you're a Dragon Warrior veteran or someone looking to finally jump into the series, Dragon Quest XI is a fantastic experience for fans and newcomers alike. It is both the perfect starting point and a wonderful throwback to the very series that created my favorite genre of game. Hey, thank you guys so much for watching. If you actually made it this far into the video, I seriously appreciate it. I know this review was a long time coming, but I'm glad to finally get it out there for you guys. Hopefully you still enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, be sure to leave a thumbs up, leave a nice comment down below. I've got a lot of other stuff planned for December, so be sure to stay tuned for that. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a great day, and I will catch you guys in the next video.